Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We review anything and everything. And today I am doing a mild comparison between these two cars. One is from Lego Speed Champions. One is the Lamborghini Countach, and the other one is the Ferrari 812 Competizione. And I just wanted to do this just because I wanted to point out that these are only two Speed Champion cars that I own, but I just wanted to make note of them because of the fact that this was the car that back in the days when I was younger, I loved completely. It was like the it car, the greatest car. And then this car right here, not this specific version, but the original that this came off of. So this is the Ferrari 812, so this is the enhanced version of the Ferrari 812, which was known as the, okay, I'm going to make sure I get this right. So the car before this, its predecessor, was the I want to say it was the super fast. I don't know if the numbers that it had any kind of titles to it, but this is the 812. And then I think before that was the let me look it up just to confirm. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing one of the iterations in between. But essentially, you had the F812 Superfast was the one that came before this in different versions of it, a base version, a more enhanced version, and then you came out with this, the 812 Competizione. But prior to that, and the original iteration was the F12 Berlinetta, which I love that car, and I bought this because obviously there's the closest thing to it, and it's kind of next of kin. But for me, the F12, in terms of being a car that made me feel kind of like, so I became at a later point in time I got into cars, but I wasn't into the cars that were super expensive that you could never afford, because I kind of became a little more grounded when it came to being into cars. So the whole fantasy car thing kind of fell away from me when you're a kid, because once you realize in real life certain cars are just not affordable, you just sometimes fade away from being a huge fan of that. But the F12 Berlinetta was the first time that I came back to that feeling of like, wow, that's a dream car that I can't afford, or at least who knows if one day I would be able to. But it's so cool that it just makes you go like, yeah, like I would want to have that on my wall on a poster and whatever the case is. So for me, I'm not gonna say it gave that same feel to the world, but for me, it gave that feel of like, wow, that's like the coolest car, like that dream car that if I could afford it, that would be that car, was the F12 Berlinetta. And so that's why I purchased this, because it was, like I said, the continuing of that generation, of that line, that segment for this. So this one right here was the original one that started that trend. So to me, it was a nice contrast to say, like, okay, this was the car that you used to dream about back in the days when you were young. And this now is the car that, as you're older, for me, is like that dream car. Like I said, the F12, but this is like, the spin-off of it, and as close as I'm going to get to it. So we're just going to call it that. When I make reference to it, we're just going to call it as if it's the F12 Berlinetta for the purpose of that. And yeah, so that to me was just very interesting, and that's what made me want to purchase both of these, because it's almost like the past and the present. And yes, they're from two different lines, but back in the days when I was growing up, Ferrari and Lamborghini were always like side by side as the dream brands, and to a degree they still are. I think that if anyone could afford an over the top, overpriced car that costs the price of a house, generally speaking, you're looking at these two brands. They're always going to be those, the top when it comes to that. So, and it's very interesting because even in the build, as I mentioned before, that in the review video of the Lamborghini, how Here you could see that the Ferrari has a more like those advanced kind of stick shift type of mechanisms that's like probably push of a button to go into your next gear or something of that sort, or it's probably just an automatic anyway. And you know, maybe it has some kind of paddle shifters the way it would have it or whatever the case is. And then with the Lamborghini, you see you got that good old traditional little stick shift in the middle. So it's funny how you can see the times, because both these cars are a reflection of the times as well, not just you know different cars that I like, but they're also a reflection of the different times and the change of cars. So that's cool in itself. Different exhaust. So yeah, let me straighten this out a little bit. There we go. So yeah, that's my thoughts with these two cars. I just want to can I give a little just my thoughts on them as cars, not necessarily for the Lego aspect, but just as cars themselves, because I feel that way about the cars. You know, in terms of if anyone's a car person and feels that way in regards to the cars. Put in the comments what's your favorite cars from the Speed Champion line, or even just your favorite cars in general. What cars when you were growing up gave you that feeling, made you feel some kind of way, invoke some kind of emotion. I'm sure a lot of you, if you grew up in the 80s, this was that car, but there might have been other cars. If you grew up at a later time, what car was it for you? In general. And then you can say, hey, does Speed Champions does Lego make a car like that? If so, tell me, you know, what car comes closest to it in the comments. I'm going to post the link in the description for both of these videos that you can purchase on Amazon. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.